You know, I can't tell you there is a thing in my life that I appreciated more than being done with practice. You know, it was always exciting. No, it wasn't. It's horrifying to talk about practice. Double sessions in the summer for football in August. You've got to be kidding me. They don't even do that anymore, right? Thinking about practice was a bad thing, but when it's done, man, you felt so good and so empowered and ready to go. That's what we get done with a retirement practice year. We're going to talk about that today on Consider This Program. Good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Sullivan.
We are happy to have you along. Hey, whether you're listening to us on a podcast or a radio show, we are happy to have you. If you're listening on the radio and you want to find us on a podcast where you can listen to any of these segments, and please don't forget, if you're listening on WIBC or some of the other stations, you don't get all of this content. You can go to anywhere you listen to podcasts, type in Consider This Program, subscribe to it, get it sent to your phone or whatever your listening device is, and you'll have it there each and every week. The intent of this show is to try to give you things that you need to consider about your financial future, where you are and going forward. The title of this theme, or the theme of this, if you will, is the Olympics. It's preparing for what's going on. And Grant and I are going to talk about one of our favorite concepts that we've created at the Financial Enhancement Group. And I'll just go ahead and let him, but it's called the Retirement Practice Year. Grant, what is that?
Retirement Practice Year is a beautiful concept and it's a beautiful tool, Joe. So just like before you enter a field to play, you need to have a game or strategy together of what that looks like. And the Retirement Practice Year is this: sitting down and evaluating what your fixed and social expenses are, what those need to look like. And remember, fixed expenses are the expenses that are going to increase with inflation, and they're also going to be the things that you can't live without. Social expenses, we know, are the joys in life, the stuff that you are going to spend money on, grandkids, travel, etc. We know that tailors off and begins to slow down over time. But evaluating those two expenditures and making sure you're crystal clear on what those are, and then working through and living through that year before you exit the workforce on that budget, making sure that you can actually stay on that budget.
So not everybody comes to us the year before they retire. All right. We've had several 70-year-olds show up this year that have been retired sometimes for 5 and 10 years before they found us and came to us. Sometimes it's CPAs who send us people who are even older than that ask us to take care of them because they're under a trustee program and need to have some support and maintenance offered. But in an ideal world, right, Joe is at his best when he wakes up at 5:15 in the morning and goes through the first 17 steps, takes 18 minutes of my morning. It's very, very regimental in terms of what I do, and it's put together. Now, I don't live in a perfect world, neither do you. It doesn't always happen. But when it does happen, those are better days than not, right? When you look at a retirement practice year, not everybody's going to get to do it, but it is exactly what Grant said, and it's best laid out. Now, here's the funny part. A retirement practice year can occur at any time in life. You can be 55 and have a retirement practice year, even though you don't plan on retiring to 65. So let's take part of what Grant said and reprocess this, if you will, and think about it. You know, we used to say in sports, and I'm sure, Grant, you did in rugby as well, that you play as you practice, right? That's why we wear the same football clothes. It's the same pads, the same cleats, the same everything. We don't play on Sunday, right? You know, we didn't have multiple jerseys to be able to wear multiple cleats. So, you know, it was the same thing. You practice like you play, and then you're going to be better off. What retirement is really all about, or the separation from the workforce, is really about that replacement of income. That's what you hear everywhere else. It has nothing to do with the replacement of income. It has to do with the replacement of standard of living. And most people truly don't know what that standard of living really is, right? So when Grant talked about a fixed expense and a social expense, we're going to go back to that and let him tell you what those are, because you can really do the retirement practice year at any time. So, Grant, give me examples of what a fixed expense is.
Fixed expense may be a car payment, most commonly utilities, cell phone bill. For some families, it's that golf club membership that they're not going to retire without.
He's looking at me.
And so, and that could be part of the case. It's something that is going to be important to pay for periodically over time. That's going to maintain and or increase your standard of, or increase your meaningfulness in your life.
So why would a car payment be included?
A car payment's included generally because, and this is the joke I always make, Joe, they just don't build them like they used to. A lot of families will come in and say, that's the last car I'm buying, because back in the day, you could buy a car and have it run for 30 years.
Now, here's the funny part, Junior, because I can call him that. He's younger than me. They do last longer, right? The average car on the road is running about 12 years now. It was 11, 12 years of age, and this year with all of the shortage, it's even worse. They do last longer. The reason the car payment goes in fixed expenses, and it doesn't for everybody, just like I taught you the golf thing. So let's look at golf. Maybe that'll help some of you who hate golf even better to understand this, right? For somebody who the thing that I taught Grant and the thing that I will teach all of you with about a retirement budget is you can give up chocolate to lose 40 pounds. You cannot lose 40 pounds and then give up chocolate. That leads to anger management, right? So if you are a person who has bought a car that has been brand new every year or every other year for the last 40 years of your life, you are going to make a huge mistake if you believe you are going to separate from the workforce, get to that goal of losing the 40 pounds, getting to that goal of not hitting the time clock, and suddenly saying, you know what, I'm going to drive this thing until it breaks down. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that leads to anger management. And yet that's the mentality that many people have. Now, how you pay for that car, Grant, is indifferent, right? If you pay for it via payments or lease payments, or if you pay for it because you have cash, either way, I would argue you are right. That is a fixed expense. And I think you summed it up so well at the end. Anything that you have in your budget that provides a meaningful thing for you at the end is something that needs to be included in that fixed expenditure, right? Something that's meaningful that you will be able to continue to do or need to do over an extended period of time in life. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me what social is.
Social is the joy in life. So that is, for my wife and I, typically.
If I could sing.
Maybe those singing lessons. For me, it's actually eating out. If you saw what my budget was for eating out, it'd probably make you sick. But it's something that we enjoy. We love doing it. It adds weight to my, or size to my waistline, weight to my pounds, right? But it is something that we enjoy doing. It's not a necessity. And it does bring us joy, but not meaningfulness. Another thing would be travel, right? And some people, this is where they'll put that in the fixed side. But travel's a big one for families, not because it's not meaningful, but we know that over time, they'll probably do less of it. So, for example, at 95 years old, I'm probably less inclined to hop on a plane to fly to Australia.
Probably less. And, of course, it may be a 2-hour flight at that point in time. And then suddenly you could be re-inclined, right? But in your recliner. Anyhow, all right, so here's the deal. So why do I tell you that you can have the retirement practice year either before retirement, 1 year before, and we do call it Your Life After Work for a reason. It's what, in our experience this is my 33rd year, the Financial Enhancement Group's 24th year. Why do I call it Your Life After Work? And the answer is most people simply don't watch grass grow. They may have a 6-month sabbatical and then they find something else to do, whether that be for philanthropy or whatever it is. The common thing that we always hear is, I don't know how I found the time to do it before. Right, your calendar does get ocupado one way or the other. But at 55, you can put together that retirement budget to begin to have a meaningful conversation with your partner about what is a fixed expense and what is a social expense. A car payment can indeed be a social expense that will disappear if you really are willing to start driving cars for 10 or 15 years. But you've got to practice for that. That's the giving up the chocolate before you lose the 40 pounds. This is what you're doing at 50, not at 60 right before you retire, right? Not before you separate from the workforce. You can give up the golf membership if that's what you want to do. But as Grant said, it's got to be something that you find that is meaningful in your life that you want to be able to keep and collect. What we have seen in our office, and this is with over 2,000 families over my career, what we've been able to see is what the national government tells us is reasonably accurate. At 65, discretionary income begins to decline. At 68, in our practice, you can watch the distributions for what we call the social expense just simply decline. One, it's usually one of three reasons. One, you can't get away from the grandkids. Congratulations about that. Two, can't get away from a doctor. Sorry about that. And the third is the comfy couch just feels too darn comfy, right? So if you're at 50, even though you're not near retirement yet, and you look at your spouse and you say, here's what we need to do, honey. The way retirement is going to work is for us to be able to make sure that we can maintain our standard of living when I separate from the workforce and when you separate from the workforce. And you sit down and you say, here's what I think our budget ought to be, and this is what we're going to stick to. And it's not because you have to live by budget. No. Don't say it. It's not because you have to live by budget. It's because we want to know what our fixed expenses and our social expenses are so that we know 15 years from now, when we separate from the workforce, that we're going to be in good place. Now, one, that creates good dialogue between you and your spouse. That's a good point, right? Number two, it gives you a good idea of what it is you need to truly be saving and accumulating, because some of this stuff is just outlandish. When you see some of these computer models, I go look at my own 401k, and I look at this number and it says, here's how much you're going to have, right? And here's how much income you can have. And I'm looking at it going, who's managing that? Because that's more than what I would tell me that I could take from that amount of money, right? You really want to get a good idea of what is going on, a good handle of what that is. You can do that 5 years after you've retired. If you're looking at each other going, this has been a good ride. We've been separated from workforce for 5 years. The market's been good, but I suddenly have this fear of what happens if I can't do it myself, or what happens if something happens to the market. You can actually have that retirement practice year even when you're already retired, because what you're really doing is working on that retirement budget to make sure that both parties, you and your spouse, have a good handle on what is fixed, what is social. If you want to know more about this conversation, go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. We'll spend 90 minutes with you. Grant or somebody on our team will spend 90 minutes with you. We'll give you things to consider today, things to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it in writing.